Hi and welcome back to my channel. I'm Simon and today I'm back with a video, well you'll have seen from the thumbnail, which is 5 fab recent reads. And this video came into being, I guess, because I've been trying to work out what I would like to read for summer and what I would recommend for reading in the summer. So it's kind of a summer recommendations video because all of these would make great summer reads. Also, I was thinking about the fact that I haven't done a wrap up for ages, and these are 5 books that over the last few months have really stood out to me. However, for various reasons, they're not necessarily going to be in my top books of the year so far. They're kind of honourable mentions, I guess, which may surprise some of you from some of the books I talk about, but mixing all of that concoction up, that's what you get these 5 books from. So yeah, see them as 5 books that I would recommend for the summer, see them as 5 of my almost favourite books of the year, and see this is a little mini wrap up before, after my summer booktube break, I come back and do my spring reading wrap up, probably in 2 parts. I think I'm doing February, March and April together, and then May and June together, with the exception of the Women's Prize books. I feel like I've talked about those quite a lot. So yeah, that's me setting my stall. I should mention this t-shirt. I bought this as a fundraiser that the Trans Library Helsinki were doing. I think they might do another run, so I will leave their website below. I think it's a really fabulous initiative. I really want to go to Helsinki. I really want to go to Finland. I've realised there's quite a lot of Europe I've not been to that I'd like to go to, so maybe that's something I'll do as the year goes on. Like Copenhagen is like right up there for me at the moment. I still can't believe I've not gone. Anyway, that's not what this video is about, where I'd like to travel. It's about 5 fab reads that I would highly recommend you get to. And the first of those is Rosewater by Liv Little. I'm still obsessed with this cover and the fact that I have seen this in the supermarket, and I love the idea of Barbara picking this and going, oh, doesn't that look like a pretty cover? Not realising quite what that is. Anyway, this also, I should say, has a beautiful hardback edition here, and now I have this one, it's a signed edition, so I don't know which one to keep. I may have to keep both. What's it about though, and why did I love it? So this is all about Elsie, and at the start of the book she's being evicted from her flat. It's one of the most tense, unsettling, it kind of properly made me do that sort of scenes, and she ends up going to have to live with her friend Juliet, who she's had a bit of an odd relationship for. We don't quite know why, but that starts to come to the fore as you read on. She's also in a job that she doesn't love and doesn't like necessarily bring her full potential, and that is in a bar, and she's having an, well, I was going to say a relationship, I guess it's more of an affair with one of her colleagues, B, who is in a heterosexual relationship as well. And it's how that bubbling concoction, is that the second time I've said concoction in this video? It's clearly my word of the day. Concoction. It's how all of that comes together, and then we follow on from there. And I loved this partly because it was a queer, black, joyous tale, and I mean, we don't tend to get that many queer joy tales full stop, but I also love the fact that it gave me real insight into a different part of the queer community. And I love the way it looked at the, I don't want to say internalised homophobia, it doesn't sound very joyous, does it, frankly, but B is a really complicated character, and I really loved that. I loved how Elsie was really flawed and complicated, and I loved how it just felt joyous and hopeful, and that's what you want, I think, every so often in a book. I mean, I will say my sort of catnip does tend to be quite traumatic, dark tales, and we'll come to some of them because I think they can be brilliant in summer too. But this, for me, just lots and lots of joy and very funny, and I can't wait to see what Liv Little writes next. Bernardine Evaristo absolutely loved it, and so did Coco Mellors, which is the perfect segue into my next recommended read of the 5, and it's Cleopatra and Frankenstein by the aforementioned Coco Mellors. Now, this might surprise quite a lot of you, especially because it's such a culty book. I read this as this was one of the most recommended to me in the comments books of last year, along with, well, we won't mention the name of the other one. You probably all know what it was, and I didn't get on with it, but I did really get on with this, and then had the pleasure of hosting Coco with West Kirby Bookshop with Blue Sisters, which you may or may not see in my books of the year so far. This is set in New York, where we meet Cleo and Frank as they're leaving a New Year's Eve party. They didn't see each other the whole time, but they sort of catch eyes and then walk home together, and it's the start of a very fast and furious relationship between the two of them, which a lot of people feel is because Cleo's visa is running out. There's also a big age gap between them, and people around them, sometimes secretly, sometimes more overtly, judge them for it, and you follow that relationship. But what I absolutely loved about this book was that as you're following them, you get to meet their friends and the people around them, friends and foes actually I should say, and the book spirals out and you get to see all different sides of these characters, but also all the different perceptions that other people have of Cleo and Frank. And I just thought that was done so brilliantly. I'm not going to go into why maybe I prefer Blue Sisters to this. It's really complicated because on any given day, either one of them could be my favourite, because this has such a big cast of characters, it's great, but also sometimes I think that's where Blue Sisters kind of excels on it, because it really focuses in on more. So I am telling you what the difference is for me and why this one may be. Today, I don't love this one as much as Blue Sisters, but tomorrow I might prefer this one. So who knows? This could be shown again in my books of the year so far video, because I haven't filmed it yet. And I was just absolutely hooked by this. I really couldn't put it down, and I think Coco Melody is going to become one of my absolute favourite authors. I can't wait for whatever she writes next. So yeah, this is a corker, but I feel like I'm possibly preaching to the converted, because a lot of you will have probably read this. Well, I say that, I know a lot of you will have read this because you recommended it to me almost as much as the other book that we won't speak of, but I bet you know what it is. One of the things that I loved about this book actually was how this spun out to one of Coco's queer friends, and I don't see the relationship between a heterosexual woman and a queer man done deftly that often. It always feels a bit, not gimme or fag haggy, but like, I don't know, it always feels a bit cliched and a bit overly done. And in the next book, I think the way this book looks at that relationship dynamic and the way this looks at friendship as if it's a love story is what has made it one of my fave reads of the year. I think this book will keep growing on me after having read it, and so I wouldn't be surprised if you see this maybe in my favourite books of the year at the end of the year, or maybe at the start of next year, depends when I do it. Anyway, what is the book? I feel like I've teased you quite enough there. It's The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue, and I am now desperate to read everything Caroline O'Donoghue has read. I think she's done some YA books, but I really want to get to her 2 books for adults, and I definitely want to head to those this summer. Anyway, I need to actually, before I even talk about this book in more detail, thank What Rae Reads, whose channel I'll link down below, for raving about this so much on her channel, which is fabulous. I'd seen it, I wasn't sure if I was that into it, and then the way she described how she loved that friendship between Rachel and James and how it looked at that dynamic between, as I said, a straight woman and a gay man, and the way that friendship is like tumultuous, it's delightful, it's tricky, it's complex, but the love between them and the way this looks at friendship and how that is one of your great loves is just fab. Their relationship does become very complex as there is a professor who is tutoring Rachel, and Rachel and James become embroiled with him. I had quite a crush on him. I have said in the past I don't understand why people say they have crushes on characters. However, this year I've had the wonderful fisherman in The Whale Tattoo, which I may well be talking about in my books of the year so far video, and also on, what's it called? Is it Dr. Byrne? Yes, Dr. Byrne, who is described as like this broad farmer, sort of geeky, intellectual, who's also hung like a chandelier. Wow, I thought this was absolutely fantastic and it really gripped me, and like I said, I'm absolutely desperate to read Caroline O'Donoghue's 2 previous novels. I also think this is the year where Irish fiction has kind of got me by the chandelier. And I'm really enjoying Irish fiction. Like, I have in the past, it's not like a whole new thing. I've tended to find in the past that it can go either of two ways, but this year I just seem to be reading Irish banger after Irish banger after Irish banger. And this is an Irish banger. Can't recommend this enough. It's absolutely fantastic. I feel like I've done it a slight disservice because I don't feel like I've talked about the ins and outs of it enough, but at the same time, finding how the sort of relationship between Rachel and James goes, and also how Dr. Byrne and his life sort of infiltrate that and vice versa. I wouldn't want to spoil that for anyone, so I'm not going to. I did like the fact that they're both booksellers as well, so that was a tick for me. Now, we head to a book where, as I mentioned, I quite like quite dark, tricky books, and this book is in some parts really sexy and salacious. In other parts, it's incredibly funny. In other parts, it's this beautiful description of a relationship falling apart and the two people who are in that relationship sort of find themselves in very different ways. Both in very complex ways, actually. The book is Little Rot by Akwaeke Emezi. This is Editing Simon. Just to say, I'm sure some of you will be surprised that this isn't going to be in my Books of the Year So Far video, but I do think it will probably end up in my overall Books of the Year video. I only finished it just the other week, so it's still percolating and all my thoughts are forming, and I think that's something about Books of the Year so far, or Books of the Year just in general. It's sometimes nice to have a little bit of distance from them, but I just thought I'd mention that because some of you might be thinking, hang on a minute, that's one of your favourite authors, and therefore automatically would they not end up in your top however many Books of the Year so far. And this one isn't quite there just because I've not had so much time with it, even though I think it's blinking brilliant. So there we are, popping that in there, adding an extra minute to the video. It's also quite disturbing because, as I was saying, this book starts off with a couple, Ima and Kalu, and they have split up, and the way Akwaeke writes about them becoming foreign places to each other and almost like they suddenly speak a foreign language is so beautifully done. And after they split up, Ima decides she thinks she's going to leave New Lagos for London, but changes her mind and decides to stay with a friend, and we start to see the complex relationship of that friendship, a beautiful complex relationship I should say. And then we follow Kalu, who goes to this sex party, and it's run by one of his friends. You find out the complications of their relationship, so that's kind of a theme here, is the complexities of friendship and relationships actually. And the next one's more of a familial one, but yeah, this is definitely about friends, lovers, former lovers, potential lovers, possible lovers. But at this party that Kalu goes to, he witnesses something incredibly shocking, but also is seen witnessing it, and from then things start to spiral. But also in New Lagos, we follow two other characters who are two sex workers, and it's how all of these different characters' lives start to evolve around each other and the rot that is spreading through New Lagos, through power and privilege. And I thought that was all done brilliantly, and there is a very deft look at desire and the extremes of desire, and I thought again that was fantastic. Also, it's an absolutely stunning book. I mean, look at those sexy cherries in there. I thought this was brilliant, and I have interviewed Akwaeke Emezi. They're one of my absolute favourite authors. I will link that interview down below. I would love it I would love it if you'd go and watch it, because I'd just like you to see it, because it's one of the loveliest bookish conversations that I've had in ages, and also like just such a pleasure and a privilege for me to be able to talk to Akwaeke, who is one of my absolute favourite authors. If you're looking for something summary, also by Akwaeke, but possibly with a bit not lighter, because it still deals with complexities because it's a book about grief, but You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty is another absolute summer banger, and Emezi banger, and just absolute banger. So that's the new thing I've started to do. I used to do that a lot, and I've now started to, I don't know why I'm doing it. And then last of the five, but certainly not least, is a book that was my Patreon book club's last pick. And I will admit, this book had a varying response from different members of the group, but I absolutely loved it. It is pretty trauma heavy though, I will say. And also, if you like dogs, possibly not for you, because that became a repeating theme throughout the book, was awful things that happen to dogs. It's Hungry Ghosts by Kevin Jared Hussein, and this is set in the 1940s in the Caribbean, and we follow two very different households in a Trinidadian town. And one household has Hans, Shweta and Krishna, who are living in the barracks, which is this incredibly poor, almost slum-like place where they have to share a building with 5 other families. They're barely surviving. And Hans works at the Changor sort of homestead. And we soon get to know Marley Changor, who is this, how can I describe her? She's this fierce, feisty woman with a real hidden past, whose husband has gone missing essentially, and she's starting to get blackmailed, and so she asks Hans to sort of spend more time around her to keep her safe, and we follow on how that goes. It's very unflinching at what it's like to be poor. There's some stuff here around bullying in terms of Krishna that I found incredibly hard to read. I was really bullied as a kid, and that I found quite really tricky. Like I said, there's the dog stuff as well. At the same time, there's kind of this look at how the people who are experiencing these difficulties are surviving, and in some ways not happy with their lot exactly, but it looks at the expectation of people there and how some of them have lost it completely. I should also say the theme of ghosts in here is fantastically done, and there is some really creepy scenes. Like, there's one point where we're with Marley in the house on her own after she's been getting this blackmail, and something is watching her, and then there's lots of noises, and I was in bed absolutely because I was just like, this feels really creepy. But that, I think, is the power of Kevin Jared Hussein's writing. I learned quite a lot historically about the Caribbean. I had no idea that there were Nazi boats out at that time. I maybe would like to tell you a little bit more of that. Anyway, it's a real gripping book. Marley is a character you will never forget. In fact, they're all characters that you'll never forget. One does a bit of a U-turn that I wasn't sure about, but overall, I found this incredibly gripping. Yes, it's hard to read in parts, but I can totally see why it's been shortlisted and indeed won awards. It's recently won the Walter Scott Historical Fiction Prize, and I can't wait to head back to some of Kevin Jared Hussein's previous books, but also read whatever he writes next. It's described as a Gothic Caribbean, and I would say this very much is. And if you remember, one of my favourite books last year was Serious Blooms at Night by Shani Mutu. That was a Caribbean Gothic too, so it's clearly something I really enjoy. So I'd love some recommendations of more of those in the comments down below. So there we go, 5 stonking books that I would heartily recommend you read. They'll all give you something delightful. They would all make perfect summer reads in various different ways. If you've read them already, let me know your thoughts on the comments down below, or if some of them are on your TBR. But also, if there's any books that you think, oh, I've read a book that's like one of those, I think you'd like it, Simon, please leave those recommendations in the comments down below, because I do really enjoy them. And as I mentioned with this one, I do eventually get to them because I do take note. Anyway, I hope you're doing super duper well. I will be back on Tuesday with my summer plans, both reading wise and channel wise and all that kind of stuff, and just life wise actually, possibly a little bit. And then on Thursday, my last video before I take a little booktube break for the summer will be my aforementioned top books of the year so far video. And on the subject of videos, please do go and watch that Akwaeke video, that lovely conversation I had with them, because yeah, it's one of the highlights of my year. That's it. Lots of linky dink dinks below if you want more of me. You may well have had, quite frankly, enough of me now, nearly 20 minutes, but I hope not. I hope you're all reading something fab, and I will see you all in another video, well, on Tuesday, so pretty soon.